Imagine a shocking scene. A lawyer from the Department of Justice, exhausted and on the brink of collapse, stands before a federal judge and says, "We have no direction. We don't know what to do." Does this seem plausible to you? A situation where lawyers from the largest legal department in the United States, tasked with defending the Constitution, admit their powerlessness? And that's not all. The worst part is that this is not an exception. It has become the norm. Overworked lawyers, suspended decisions, and repeated violations of fundamental rights. But here's the question behind all this. Why is no one doing anything? Why does this legal chaos intensify daily with no intervention? Stick with me, because what lies behind this crisis isn't just politics. It could affect your life, your rights, and your security. It all starts with one simple fact. This department, once respected, is now on the brink of collapse. And the real question is, what does this mean for you, for your future? This is not an isolated incident. It's not a temporary failure. What we're witnessing today is the complete breakdown of a system that was meant to protect the Constitution and safeguard the rights of citizens. And it all starts with one simple truth. The Department of Justice, once a model of efficiency and prestige, is now in crisis. But what's truly shocking is how they've managed this crisis. Can you imagine a world where a government lawyer stands before a judge, admitting their inability to fulfill their duties, utterly exhausted? This is not fiction, it's the reality of the American judicial system today. And here a fundamental question arises. How did we get here? A department so powerful, so respected, now in such chaos. What does this truly mean for the future of justice? What could this lead to for you, your rights, and the safety of future generations? Imagine this. A lawyer, out of breath, says before a judge that they have no plan, no directive. They're struggling to follow orders they know are impossible to fulfill. And yet this isn't the only example. This is the daily reality of the Department of Justice today, a system cracking before our eyes. It's not just a lack of resources or personnel, it's a matter of leadership and direction. What this reveals is a far bigger systemic issue. Imagine what this means for ordinary citizens. Ignored deadlines, rights trampled on, crucial decisions left in limbo. And behind it all, a central question arises. Who is responsible for this collapse? Who is allowing all of this to happen? One major fact stands out here. The crisis doesn't just affect the lawyers, but the entire judicial system. And if those entrusted with upholding the law can't even follow the orders of a judge, what does that mean for all of us? What stands out here isn't just the inability to respect judicial orders, it's how this situation keeps worsening week after week. This is not an issue that will be easily resolved. What's happening today is an amplification of something we've seen before. A gradual weakening of key institutions, a phenomenon that's not new, but seems to be intensifying now. Take a moment to think about other historical crises where entire departments collapsed under the weight of mismanagement. It almost feels like a return to a time when once venerable institutions were left paralyzed, unable to fulfill their missions. What needs to be understood is that today, this normalization of chaos should not be accepted. It's no longer an isolated incident, it's a repeating pattern. The question is not whether this is an exception, but how far this crisis can go and why it's so dangerous for the future of justice. But wait, that's not all. This is not just a matter of lack of direction or lawyer burnout. What's even more striking is the glaring contradiction between what's being said and what's being done. Take, for example, the messages sent by Department of Justice officials. On one hand, there's talk of a mission to defend the Constitution, and on the other, there are social media ads recruiting lawyers for federal prosecutor positions as though it's just a regular job advertisement. Join the mission, do good for your country, said one of the officials. But here's what changes everything. It looks less like a call to serve justice and more like a desperate recruitment campaign to fill the vacancies left by a department in disarray. This paradox paints a devastating picture. Not only are former employees leaving the department in droves, but those who remain are being pushed to make ethical compromises to keep their jobs. This is where the true scale of the problem becomes clear, a system collapsing under the weight of its contradictions. As all of this unfolds, events take an even more worrying turn. In a matter of weeks, what seemed like an isolated issue has transformed into a systemic crisis. On one side, you have DOJ lawyers fighting to stay afloat in a broken system. On the other, federal judges, faced with inaction and contempt of orders, are being forced to question the very foundation of judicial authority. Add to this the desperate recruitment to fill empty positions, roles left vacant by qualified lawyers who have left in droves, and you have a judicial administration in freefall. But here's the question. If this dynamic continues, where does this lead us? An entire institution, once respected, is fragmenting under pressure. And it's now clear that with each passing day, the longer this chaos endures, the higher the price the country pays. Who will be held accountable? Now, imagine this. It's not just a bureaucratic problem or failed public policy. It has a direct impact on people's lives, ordinary citizens, those who, like you, rely on a functioning judicial system. Take a moment to think about what this means in practice. Prosecutors are absent, urgent cases go unprosecuted, victims of crimes are left without justice. In this legal void, it's the innocent who pay the price. And when Department of Justice lawyers find themselves in a position where they can no longer defend people's rights, it's the very fabric of society that suffers. The question becomes, who is protecting the citizen in the face of an administration that is slowly falling apart? If this sounds familiar, let me know in the comments. You are not alone in asking this question. What's happening here is not just an individual failure or a tragic coincidence. It's a problem deeply embedded in the system itself. What allows this crisis to persist is a complex web of levers and incentives. When a Justice Department runs out of competent lawyers, those in charge are no longer there to defend the law, but to defend a political agenda. Pressures come from all directions. Unrealistic expectations, misdirected priorities, and above all, a desire to maintain total control at any cost. This system, which should embody justice and stability, has become a spectacle machine where truth and law are relegated to the back seat. And the question now is, how can such a transformation happen in a department meant to guarantee order? This isn't just a one-time failure. It's the result of a system working against its own principles. So what happens now? Two scenarios seem to be unfolding. The first is that this crisis continues to worsen. More and more lawyers leave the department. Offices become even emptier, and the judicial system collapses entirely under the weight of incompetence and disinterest. If this continues, the rule of law will become increasingly illusory. But there's also another, more insidious scenario, a temporary recovery where DOJ officials, trapped by their own mistakes, try to patch things up with superficial solutions. But that won't solve anything at its core. The question is, in what state will the judicial system be in 6 months, a year? And what will happen when this pressure, which continues to build, reaches its peak? The next move is already in the works, but which direction will it take? What we've seen so far is shocking, but there's a deeper truth behind it all. This system, once venerated, is now on the brink of collapse, and this affects each of us. Inaction, corruption, and the inability to defend citizens' fundamental rights reveal deep structural flaws that threaten the integrity of the rule of law itself. In the end, it's not just the Department of Justice that's in crisis, it's democracy itself. But this is not the end of the story. What lies behind this situation is a valuable lesson on the consequences of abandoning the principle of justice. Stay tuned, because the story continues to unfold. For deeper analysis, subscribe to stay updated on what's happening behind the scenes in power and justice.